There we go. All right. Well, we've eaten dinner. Yeah, we didn't get our exercise. Let's open with prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for the food that you gave us. And Lord, we ask that it strengthen our minds, that we may have discernment and learn this afternoon on a very important topic, building our immune system. You want us to be strong. You want us to be healthy. And you've given us the tools to do it. Lord, help us not to take them out. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. You know, there's so much talking about immune system over the last, since, 3 years now. Some folks are tired of hearing about immune system. They've been immune system out. But the immune system is very, very important. And we want to be careful to take care of our immune system because it can definitely affect how our daily life is, our weekly life, our annual life, ultimately how long we live. And so I'd like to share on about immune system. Y'all asked me to talk about immune system, optimal immunity and how to achieve it. We're going to look at several things: optimal immunity, how to achieve it. Number one, what is the immune system? What things not to do, what can take out your immune system, what things to do, and some things you can take. So what's the immune system? Immune system distinguishes self from non-self and eliminates potentially harmful non-essential molecules and cells from the body. The immune system also has the capacity to recognize and destroy abnormal cells that derive from host tissues. Any molecule capable of being recognized by the immune system is considered an antigen. Skin, cornea, mucosa of the respiratory and gastrointestinal tract form a physical barrier that is the body's first line of defense. Some of these barriers also have active immune function. So what are these areas that we got to protect? The skin, the cornea, the eyes, the mucosa of the respiratory, that's what we breathe, and the mucosa of the gastrointestinal tract from physical harm. How do we mess with the mucosa of the gastrointestinal tract? What we eat, like apple cider vinegar can damage the mucosa. Black pepper can damage the mucosa. White pepper can damage the mucosa. Cayenne pepper, if cooked, can damage our digestive tract. But if cook your food and then add your cayenne, and that actually is beneficial. You just don't want to cook the cayenne pepper. Things not to do. Example. This is an example of what we're talking about. It's kind of a different subject, but to explain what I'm speaking on. Heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, and atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is clogged arteries. Heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, and atherosclerosis. Dietary excess and imbalance cause much disease and death, and this is the United States Surgeon General. Diet has a vital influence on health, according to the Surgeon General. 5 of the top 10 killers are directly related to diet. This includes heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, and atherosclerosis. So it says that diet is a major part of these diseases. It is clear that diet contributes in substantial ways to the development of these diseases. It is clear that diet contributes in substantial ways to the development of these diseases, and that modification of diet can contribute to their prevention and control. And actually, it can reverse, we now know. And here's the United States Surgeon General. Well, taking that process, how about the immune system? How do we weaken our immune system? I call them the 5 S's. Sugar, stress, and sleep deprivation are the big 3 that will wipe out your immune system significantly. Let's look at sugar. Besides being a driver behind chronic health conditions like diabetes and heart disease, sugar consumption affects one's body's ability to fight off viruses or other infections in the body. White blood cells, also known as killer cells, are highly affected by sugar consumption. Sugar hinders the immune system by not allowing white blood cells to do their job and destroy bad bacteria or viruses, as well as when we do not eat sugar. How many of y'all have read the book by Neil Nedley called Proof Positive? In there, Neil talks about a soft drink, a 12-ounce soft drink, will wipe out. What it will do, it will wipe out 50% of your immune system for up to 4 hours, or anesthetizes 50% of your white cells for 4 hours. He says, take a candy bar, like a Snickers bar when we were kids. Snickers bar about like this, not the ones in the store today, but the ones when we were kids, about this big. Remember those? And then one 12-ounce soft drink. In there, if you've read, I encourage y'all to read Proof Positive. You know, the way Neil thinks, if he writes a little bit, he has to write as much or more on small print of where it came from. He just has all that background documentation, research to prove what he says. You take the little Snickers bar, you take the 12-ounce soft drink, and Neil says that out of 14 white cells, you anesthetize 13 for approximately 4 hours. One is doing its job. Now, if you think on playing basketball, I'm not into sports anymore, but if you had 14 players, in which you don't in basketball, but you say you had, unless you're dealing with Harlem Globetrotters, but your typical, high school basketball teams, local high school teams, you have 14 on one team and one on the other, who's going to win? Yeah. And so when we consume that sugar, it significantly affects our immune system. Neil says that an average milkshake, an average slice of cheesecake, just the average slice of cheesecake, will wipe out your immune system 92 to 93% for up to 4 hours. That's significant. It really is. And that's what we're talking here. Here's some examples. The average American eats approximately 22 teaspoons of sugar per day, 150 pounds of sugar per year, and 79 pounds of high fructose corn syrup. That is a problem, and it's probably higher than that today. High fructose corn syrup, not only are you dealing with the issues of the sugar, but you're dealing with the issues of what else? Corn. What's the problem with corn we're seeing? GMO, yes. There's a good friend of mine. Who's ever heard of Bob Gregory? Bob Gregory. Bob Gregory was one of the top rose experts in the world, one of the top 12 in soil analysis for growing the best roses in the world. And people would contact Bob from all over the world, the rose growers, on how to get the most out of their soil to have the best yield in roses, to sell roses. Bob was converted and became a Christian. And Bob now takes that knowledge that he used in growing the best roses to having the best food for us, the best nutrients in the soil to have the best nutrition. Well, I was talking to Bob maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and Bob said, Walt, there's new research, and a researcher friend of his, some scientist, has found that as we were talking about, Bob and I were talking about the challenges of the wheat, the 42 chromosome wheat and the superhybridization, but especially the 42 chromosome wheat and the negative effects on the human body that so many are writing on. And Bob said that his friend has found very similarly, corn is causing similar aspects. I was noticing that people would come to me and they would say, I feel like I have gluten intolerance. And they'd feel the difference in when they ate gluten. But yet when they tested them at the doctor, it didn't show up gluten intolerance. And about 2 years later, they'd come back and they would say, I now test positive for gluten intolerance. And so I was talking to a friend of mine. I talked about him earlier, Dr. Arvo Khanna, who's a neurologist. I said, Arvo, it's like the test is not sensitive enough. You have to be really bad with gluten intolerance before the test will pick it up. And he said, Walt, you're exactly right. We've now realized that. And that test is not accurate. Well, it is. Once you get so bad, it will pick it up. And then the test is not sensitive enough. And I was talking to my friend Bob, and he said, Bob, they're now finding that the GMO corn also is causing very similar symptoms as the super hybridized wheat. And so as you use high fructose corn syrup, not only are you dealing with the sugar aspect, but you're also dealing with the GMO issue. And that's not what God made for us. Just some numbers you can look at. You don't think about how much is in ketchup. And, well, I won't mention that. Things not to do, sleep deprivation, another one. Sleep provides essential support to the immune system. Getting sufficient hours of high-quality sleep enables a well-balanced immune defense that features strong innate and adaptive immunity and less severe allergic reactions. You got problems with allergies, maybe you just need to get some sleep. Lack of sleep can affect your immune system. Studies show that people who do not get quality sleep or enough sleep are more likely to get sick after being exposed to a virus, such as a common cold virus. Lack of sleep can also affect how fast you recover if you do get sick. This is my biggest challenge. When I have a call out in the middle of the night on the interstate, or a house fire, or a medical call, or to go pick up Miss Smith who lives alone and she fell off the toilet when she was trying to go back to the room, her bedroom. We have to go in there and get her up, and it's called a lift assist. We do a lot of lift assist today in the middle of the night, during the day, but in the night. And what happens is that little medical call is not that bad, but it's when I'm fighting fire all night long, or if I'm on the interstate working a big wreck on the interstate. It wipes out my immune system. And there's a good chance I can get sick. And there's things I do I'll talk about in a moment to try to fight that. Stress. Anybody have stress? Stress is the #1 diagnosis in America today. WHO, World Health Organization, says that soon stress will be surpassed by, what do you think? Depression. Depression. Depression's huge out there, and it's getting worse and worse. Many of today's illnesses and diseases, this is from Psychology Today, are triggered by chronic stress, which depresses the immune system, and wreaks havoc on every organ system in the body. And there's two kinds of stress. You have acute stress, and you have chronic stress. Acute stress. What's an example of acute stress? Pardon? A loved one dies? Pardon? An exam. Oh, yeah, that'll do it. Or you're driving down the road, all of a sudden blue lights come up behind you. Is that stress? Hopefully it's not chronic. When we have stress, the adrenaline goes up, cortisol goes up. We go into what's called fight or flight. And it's good that God gave us fight or flight. Now, when I go to Africa and I talk about running from the bear, they don't get it. But when I talk about running from the lion, they got that one. They have to worry about that one. They don't have bears over there. But we do. We've got bears. And we know what it means to run from the bear. And God gave us, and there's actually some physiological benefit to eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S, we're told. That real quick, acute stress. But it's the chronic stress is the problem. Because when that adrenaline's up, when that cortisol's up, our blood pressure goes up, our clotting factor goes up, our glucose goes up. There's just so many things that rise, but it shuts down our immune system. It shuts down our healing factor. And actually, Harvard really blasted the American medical system with cancer several years ago. And what was happening is, let's say that, well, what they did is they did a study on, they had looked at research on prostate cancer, but now they were looking and seeing, is it the same with women and breast cancer? So let's say that Mary Lou goes and she has a mammo, and they say, oh, we think we have something. They do a biopsy from that point. Then they go and Harvard started measuring the healing factor. And they were doing this 4 times a day. And they measured it and until she sat down with the oncologist and he said, yes, it's cancer, or no, it's not cancer, and here's our plan. Immediately, the healing factor went back up. It's called the period of unknown. The period of unknown. It could be it could be by palpation. It could be by biopsy, by mammo. They do a biopsy, and that's what they were measuring from, is the biopsy to when you sat down. And they found it could be 6, 8 weeks or longer, because maybe the doctor was on vacation. Maybe it just took forever. And what Harvard found is the healing factor in the body when you're in the period of unknown just dies. The healing. And Harvard says, now is the time of ever that you need to have good healing if you got cancer. And their plea out of this research was, don't be lazy at this. If you got a biopsy, let's get the results. Let's get a plan going as quick as possible for those folks. And so you want to be careful of the period of unknown. There's other periods of unknown that we have, but there's a huge tool that we can use for the period of unknown. What is that? Trust in God. That's exactly right. It's amazing how powerful trusting God is. And we don't have to be the average person out there. So you've got, let me come back. We've got the acute stress, and then you have the chronic stress. What's some examples of chronic stress? Work, relationships, diseases, sickness. There's a number of things that can be chronic stress. It could be the traffic every day if you're in New York City or LA. Or what? Pardon? Oh, okay. Oh, it's under construction. That's, oh, KGB, gotcha. So what happens is when you're in chronic stress, and there are people who are in chronic stress not only during the day, but do you know people who nightmare all night? Or maybe wake up and worry about something all night? That's the people who are in chronic stress. And what happens is when those hormones are in fight or flight all the time, that is the most dangerous. That is when you're more prone to get sick. So many of today's illnesses and diseases are triggered by chronic stress, those things that just are on there all the time, which depresses the immune system and wreaks havoc on every organ in the system, organ system in the body. Exactly how stress causes and contributes to disease is a question of particular interest to researchers. There are 2 likely pathways. One is behavioral. People under stress sleep poorly and are less likely to exercise as they adapt poor eating habits, smoke more, don't comply to medical treatment. Stress also triggers a response by the body's endocrine system, which releases hormones that influence multiple other biological systems, including the immune system. Now, this is interesting. 1 minute of anger can suppress your immune system for 6 hours. And I got this from Neil's book. I got this from, who's read his book, Depression the Way Out? I think it's either Proof Positive or Depression on the Way Out. This is in. And so I was teaching a class with my friend, the neurologist, Arvo Kana. And we were teaching a class on immune system, and I had this slide, and I said, Arvo, you're the expert in the brain. Tell me, 1 minute of anger can suppress your immune system for 6 hours. I said, do you understand the physiology in this statement? Could I equally change the word anger to major stress? Or, a good dose of stress? He says, absolutely. It has the same physiological effect in the brain. So let's change it. 1 minute of anger or stress can suppress your immune system for 6 hours. Do you ever get stressed? You might be at work and you get a phone call from a customer. Or it may be your boss. Or it may be whoever. And boom, your stress kicks up. Do you ever get those? Boom. If you have it for 1 minute, you just wiped out your immune system for 6 hours, according to this research. Things not to do: sugars, sleep deprivation, stress, a poor diet, vitamin D deficiency, alcohol, obesity, smoking, dehydration, and internet addiction. Lowers your immune system. So let's look at them. Poor diet. Diets that are limited in variety and low in nutrients, such as consisting primarily of ultra-processed foods, can negatively affect the healthy immune system. Now, are there a lot of diets out there that don't have a lot of variety? When people come to me and I'm helping them set up a new diet, a new lifestyle program, I print them off. Well, first of all, they say, well, there's not much to eat on your diet. All you do is just eat rabbit food, just salad. Well, I say, well, hold on. And I print off this 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that has all kinds of fruit and all kinds of vegetables and all kinds of nuts and all kinds of seeds and all kinds of grains. Now, I do pull out the gluten grains because we are seeing some issues there. And they go, wow, that's a lot of food. Yeah, it is. Do you eat that much? No, they don't. They go to Hardee's in the morning for breakfast, Wendy's for breakfast, McDonald's, that's the big one in our town, McDonald's. McDonald's tore down the old McDonald's, built a new McDonald's, and they have a double road that goes through there. And they're still out in the road. I mean, that's the danger place, just driving by there. All the cars parked trying to get in the place. And then where are they going for dinner? The noon meal. Maybe even the same place again. Or maybe they're going to Pizza Hut. Or maybe they're doing McDonald's for breakfast and Hardee's for dinner. And then evening, what'd you say? Yeah, okay. What do we have? We've got, what's the big chicken thing around? Chicken filet? Kentucky Fried Chicken? Yeah, big into chicken where I'm from. Big into chicken. And then at supper, they'll whip by Pizza Hut or Domino's. Is that a lot of variety? No. And so diets that are limited in variety and low in nutrients, which we call calorie dense, they're dense in calories, but they don't have a lot of nutrients in it. We want something that is called nutrient dense food. Such as consisting primarily of ultra-processed foods can negatively affect the healthy immune system. It is also believed that a Western diet high in refined sugar and red meat and low in fruits and vegetables can promote disturbances in healthy intestinal microorganisms, resulting in chronic inflammation of the gut. That's a huge issue, y'all, inflammation of the gut, and associated suppressed immunity. And this is the research that it came out of. Vitamin D deficiency. And we talked a little bit about vitamin D earlier. Deficiency in vitamin D is associated with increased autoimmunity and an increased susceptibility to infection. Research shows that vitamin D plays an important role in immune function, and a deficiency in it is shown to increase one's susceptibility to infection. What's your vitamin D level? It's not how much you take, it's what's the blood level. Something very important to know. Pardon? I'm sorry? Calcium and vitamin D. You want to know what the blood level of vitamin D is. The calcium can help the vitamin D. Absolutely, it can. The K2 the magnesium, yes, those will help to raise. So there is a correlation if you're low in calcium. And what's your best source of calcium? Green leafy vegetables. No. No, when I took nutrition courses from Cornell, we learned that, let's say you have a glass of milk. It's at 300. Now, this is tough for me, guys. I grew up on a dairy farm, and we knew that dairy was full of calcium. And it does have calcium, but what they lied to us on. Sometimes can you lie to people by not telling them something? And what they didn't tell us was, yes, that may have 300 milligrams of calcium, but to process the protein in that milk, it may take 500 milligrams to process it. So what do you do every time you eat cheese, milkshake, drink a glass of milk, ice cream? You're losing calcium. You're actually losing calcium. So if you have osteopenia, osteoporosis, they're now telling folks, stay away from dairy. Vitamin D deficiency can mean your immune system is more vulnerable. Low levels of vitamin D have also been associated with frequent infections. In 2009, the National Institute of Health warned that low vitamin D levels are associated with frequent colds and influenza. There's also a correlation with vitamin D and your HDL. If you want to increase your HDL, the good cholesterol, check your vitamin D level. It could be the reason you have a low HDL is because you have a low vitamin D level. Alcohol. Alcohol compromises the body's immune system and increases the risk of adverse health outcomes. Alcohol can trigger inflammation in the gut and destroy the microorganisms that live in the intestines and maintain immune system health. This is PubMed. Obesity. Can obesity affect immune system? Obesity, like other states of malnutrition. Now you think obesity, the biggest patient I ever worked with on helping them lifestyle-wise was, this guy was 572 pounds. He's a big man. He came in on a Sunday. He wore bedroom slippers. He drove a huge, big old Cadillac. Not the Cadillacs today, they've gotten little. But this was one of them big old Cadillacs. It was Sedan DeVille. And it took that big to haul this fella. And Friday morning, he disappeared. We didn't know where he was. He's gone. Finally, he come back before we started trying to figure out what's going on. And he gone to Walmart, which is about 40 minutes away. Bought him a pair of tennis shoes. That morning he got up, found out he could lean over enough that he could touch his feet. He went and bought him a pair of tennis shoes. He could tie his shoes. But the average person that's in this 450 up that I work with, their diet is, they eat a lot of food. They actually can be malnourished. And you say, how can that person be malnourished? Look how big they are. How can they be malnourished? It looks like they're getting good food. Well, what it is they're eating empty calories. And the typical person, as I sit down and I do a history, they're eating hamburgers, hot dogs, fries, chips, pizza, soft drinks, chicken. That's the typical diet of those folks. And it's just not good nutrition. And so actually the people are malnourished. Obesity, like other states of malnutrition, is known to impair the immune function, altering the leukocyte counts, as well as cell-mediated immune response. This is Cambridge University. Smoking. It's interesting. In the 1970s, we were battling so much against the issues of coming clean on what was going on in tobacco, in the tobacco industry. Today, we're up against that same, against the food industry. Smoking harms the immune system and can make the body less successful at fighting disease. And smoking, if you have a wound, you need to quit smoking. If you have a wound that won't heal, because smoking causes vasoconstriction, and you just don't heal well. Dehydration. Significant positive correlations were found between severity of dehydration and changing ratios, and I won't go through all these guys, but dehydration affects the immune system. These results suggest that dehydration results in immunosuppression, including decreased neutrophil function. This is an interesting one. Can internet addiction affect the immune system? Internet addiction can damage immune function. People with excessive internet use have 30% more cold and flu symptoms than those with less problematic internet usage. Those who spend excess time on the internet tend to, and here's the problems, they get greater sleep deprivation because they can't get off their devices, especially gaming, but even just Facebooking. I mean, folks can be just on there for hours and hours and hours. They can't get off. Worse eating habits and a less healthy diet. They don't take the time to go eat a good meal. They're eating junk. Engaged in less exercise because they're spending it on internet. Tend to smoke and drink alcohol more. Things not to do: sugar, sleep deprivation, stress, poor diet, vitamin D deficiency, alcohol, obesity, smoking, dehydration, internet addiction. Those are a few things that are big. Things to do. Number one is prayer. On anything, that is number one. Ask God for discernment on what you need to do. I won't read these, but go home and read Psalms 91 and Psalms 103. WHO. We used to tell our staff, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Well, now we're learning you can wash your hands too much. There's different ways of washing your hands. You can use alcohol. You can use other quaternaries and whatever. It is true we need to wash our hands. Soap and water, that will do some pathogens. Alcohol can kill other pathogens. If you want to make sure, do both. Practice respiratory hygiene. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing. Throw the tissue into a closed bin. Wash your hands. Well, let's go back in time. Look at what time it is. I'll see if I can drink. Think about when we were kids, and we had a snotty nose. And Granddad would come up and he'd pull out his hanker and say, blow your nose, Henry. Sally, blow your nose too. And he'd go and blow his nose. Remember those days? Yeah, I remember them days. And he'd stick it back in the pocket for the next time. That's probably not the best thing to do. It's probably better to use some type of a tissue and throw it away and wash your hands. And don't use it one person after another. But that's what we used to do. It was funny. The fire department is having a fall festival. We have vendors come in, and we have all kind of crafts and stuff. And we were trying to brainstorm some things to do to raise money for the fire hall. And they said, what else? And I said, well, we could have bobbing for apples. Bobbing for apples. Remember when we used to bob for apples? Anybody ever bob for apples? You know, you get a big old round wash tub and fill it full of water and apples, and everybody stick their face down in there and try to bite an apple and take it out. Can you imagine doing that today? Maintain social distancing, especially if coughing or fever. It's interesting, WHO, prior to COVID, and actually when COVID first came out, WHO's recommendation was only 1 meter. It was only 1 meter. Now they're saying 2 meters. Avoid touching your eyes, mouth, and nose. Why is that? That's holes that it can get inside your body. Yeah. Mask and personal protective equipment if you're at risk when caring for someone who is sick and in a healthcare setting. That is WHO's recommendation when we first started dealing with these issues. It wasn't all the time even driving the car by yourself. And I still see that today. I still see people driving their car, get out and come in to see us, and they get back in the car and they drive off in their mask by themselves. If you're unwell, stay home. If you have a fever, cough, or difficulty breathing, seek early medical care. Now, these are the World Health Organization's recommendations. Some of that's just horse sense, common sense. A healthy diet. A balanced diet consisting of a range of vitamins and minerals most effectively primes the body to fight infection and disease. Harvard School of Public Health. Eating enough nutrients as part of the varied diet is required for the health and function of all cells, including the immune cells. Hydrotherapy. Who's ever done hydrotherapy? Hydrotherapy is powerful in building the immune system. We have cold water at the house. We're up on a mountain. We got spring water, but y'all got cold water. I felt y'all's water, and it is plumb cold. A lot colder than our water. Pardon? Still runs. Yes. If I was to take your blood before you got in the shower, and then after the hot shower, take your blood, your white count actually drops a little. The heat will drop your white count. But then, when you take that cold shower, just 30 seconds, I retake your blood, it's higher than when you started. It's amazing what cold water can do. Cold shower, benefits of cold showers. Let me read off some of them here. Strengthens the immune system, increases hormone production, improves circulation, increases metabolism, alleviates depression. It's a detoxer. Improves male fertility, speeds up healing. Prevent post-workout injuries, decrease chronic pain, reduce body aches, improve the hair of your health, improves kidney function, reduces swelling and edema, heals and tones the skin, regulates your autonomic nervous system, regulates your uric acid levels in your body, and improves sleep. How much is cold water shower? It's not too expensive. Yeah. Dr. Schultz says, and Schultz has some good information. Sometimes I'd rather read Schultz than listen to him. But Schultz says if you're not screaming, it ain't cold enough. I can tell when Mary Lou finishes her shower. She's hollering. Pardon? What it does is it increases in the detoxing mechanism, increasing the white cells, increasing the circulation. The saunas. Who's ever done a sauna? Well, of course, you're in Alaska. What were they called? Who has a McKay? A McKay? Yeah, when we were over in Dillingham, we had an opportunity to go to some of the local people. And even some of the Caucasians had McKays, but they called, the natives called that's white man's. Theirs is different. And it's a sauna. It was just this big old, like a 55-gallon barrel, and it had wood in there and all rocks all around it, and it was like a sweat lodge that we'd see with the Cherokee Indians or the other Native Americans in lower 48. And it's huge. In the wintertime, you can get it, and like the Russians, go roll around, get back in, roll around. Well, here, when we were over in Dillingham, it was in the summertime, and you just use a water hose with your cold water and then get back in. Then come back in, cold water, go back in, and that increases the immune system. You can I mean, it detoxes you. It's tremendous for detoxing. Those are some of the older saunas from years ago. Fever treatments. Who's ever done a fever treatment? We were doing fever treatments, and I read something out of Loma Linda that said by Dr. Thomas, Charles Thomas, that said it would increase the white cell count 7-fold. So I had my nurses draw labs before the treatment, at the end of the treatment, after the cold water, and every 30 minutes. And Loma Linda said it would increase the white count 7-fold, and I didn't believe it. Well, guess what? Loma Linda was right. It does increase the white count 7-fold, and it peaked for every single patient that we did it on at 5 hours. It didn't matter what reason we were doing the fever treatment for. And Dr. Harold Cherney's research found that it doesn't come back to normal for 3 days doing a fever treatment. Now, a fever treatment is where you put the person in the water, and the water is between around 105, 106 degrees, and it warms the body up. You want an oral temp of 102 to 104. Put an ice pack on the head, and which they put ice towel, and you have them sip on water about every 5 minutes. If they're hypertensive, check their pulse. If they're prone to being tachycardia, all you have to do, if they get a little tacky, too much on it, then you just stick a bag of ice on their chest and it come right down. We use it for building the immune system. You want to maintain the oral temperature of 102 to 104 for 30 minutes. But I now found that one of the challenges with fever treatment is some people don't have bathtubs. They don't have showers. Or a person may not physically be able to get down in the bathtub or get out of the bathtub. And so I found another tool that will do a fever treatment, and that's far infrared. And I encourage you to do your research on far infrared. It's phenomenal, the benefits from bone healing, immune system. It's FAR-INFRARED. And I'm not a good speller, I think that's right. But far infrared, it's phenomenal what we're seeing from addressing cancer to a number of areas. Well, in a far infrared sauna, we can get a person's oral temp up to 102 in around 25 to 30 minutes, 28 to 30, probably more so. And then you can maintain it for 30 minutes. If the oral temp gets over 104, you got zippers, or you can click your clicker, turn it off, zip it out, until your oral temp comes down into that 102 to 104, zip it back up, kick it back on to keep that at that temperature for that 30 minutes. So the far infrared changes the water molecule in the blood so you have better perfusion. So actually what the big benefit of the far infrared is you're increasing the flow of the blood. And that's why we see significant benefits for cardiac. And that's why cardiologists in Japan and Korea use it for cardiac patients. It's going to increase the nitric oxide. But also if you get a patient, let's say you get a patient with a low EF, ejection fraction, and you have very small movement of that left ventricle. You have very, very poor perfusion. You put them in the sauna, it boosts that low perfusion that they have and gives them more perfusion.
So in our shot, it's the electromagnetic radiation itself, not just the warmth.
Correct. Yes. And it's actually a frequency that goes back and forth. And not all far infrareds are the same, I'm told. There's frequencies that are within medical grade that gives you the medical benefit, where the others are just to feel good warm or to cook food or whatever. That's a different frequency. But far infrared is phenomenal. It will do the same as the fever treatment. Here's some more fever treatments here, the Navy using fever treatments. And then afterwards you wash them off. And then Dr. Thomas at Loma Linda said, you've got to put the patient to bed for 2 hours. And so that's what they've done. They wrapped them up good. But what do you notice happening here? The nurses are on standby. Because if you're going to fall asleep and you're tied up like a mummy, and you wake up, you're kind of confused, you try to get up and fall over and break the patient's arm, hip, whatever, head. And so they're on standby there to make sure that the patient doesn't fall. You also do the same thing if you put them in a cold sheet pack. If they fall asleep, you don't want them trying to get up, especially if on like a cot like this, or even on a regular bed, they could roll over and fall. Fomentations are phenomenal. When I was in school in college taking healthcare, and I saw this old fella. He was an old nurse. He was in his late 90s. And he said, "Walt, you're going into healthcare. I need to tell you something. You might need this someday." He said, back in 1918, he said, I was in World War I. I was a nurse in World War I. And he said, during the Spanish flu, the only thing that we found in the Army that would effectively work against the Spanish flu was the fomentations. And he told me about, I'd not heard about them before, and the hot and cold fomentations. And so you can put hot on for 3 minutes, cold on for 1 minute. Hot for 3 minutes, cold for 1 minute. Or you can do a cold mitten friction for 30 seconds. Some people do 3 minutes, 30 seconds. And I like doing it for 7 times, do it multiple times. It's amazing for building the immune system. Using hot and cold contrast showers, bathing, or fomentations can powerfully optimize. This is did Youngberg come here? Youngberg came here? Okay. Well, this is Youngberg's clinic here I'm quoting. Hot and cold contrast showers, bathing, or fomentations can powerfully optimize immune function and greatly stimulate antibody production against viral and other forms of infection. In 1918, the Spanish influenza was one of the deadliest pandemics in this country has ever faced. This is prior to what we just dealt with. Yet it wasn't without hope. Every other method seemed to be to avail little, but a simple treatment of using water was found to be very successful in treating the deadly flu. It was called the fomentation treatment. Why does the fomentation treatment work? The application of heat to the skin draws blood to the surface and away from the internal organs. Heat relaxes the muscles and decreases pain and inflammation. Increased blood flow to the area stimulates white blood cell reproduction and action. The sweating caused by the heat increases the body's ability to eliminate body wastes and toxins in the system. The treatment calms and soothes the nerves. So as we look at things to do, prayer, just typical, universal precautions, a healthy diet, and hydrotherapy are some things you could do. What are some things you can take? Vitamin D. Vitamin D helps our immune system stay balanced during the cold and flu seasons and serves as a pharmacy resource. There are vitamin D receptors and activating enzymes in the surface of all white blood cells. There is vitamin D2 and vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 will last in the blood system twice as long as D2. And D2 is a total vegetarian D. But can you get a vegetarian D3? Yes. You can get a D3 that is from mushrooms. You can get a D3 that is from sea vegetables. This is from Pharmacy Times. The role that vitamin D plays in keeping the immune system healthy is very complex because the immune system has to be perfectly balanced. If there is too much stimulation, autoimmune disease can set in. If there is not enough immune system activity, frequent infections can occur. Garlic. Garlic's one of my favorite. I have 2 big fans, and that is garlic and one other one. Allicin is an active ingredient of garlic that has antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, and antiprotozoal activity. This is from National Institute of Health. Now, do you remember when I was speaking this morning about the man who had the MRSA that was vancomycin resistant? This is what we used. We used a very, very strong allicin. This allicin, it takes 24 cloves of garlic to make 1 drop of this allicin. It's very powerful. Allicin exhibits various biological properties like antimicrobial, anti-cancer, antioxidant, immunomodulatory, anti-inflammatory, hypoglycemic, and cardiovascular effects, again from National Institute of Health. Have you ever seen when you eat garlic, folks say smash it and then eat it? Well, that smashing aspect, it mixes two compounds together and it makes allicin. The challenge with allicin is not very stable. I've only found one place in the world that has found to stabilize allicin. It's out in England. It's stabilized for 2 years. But when you crush your garlic, you need to use it now because it's not going to be stable and you'll lose it. Garlic appears to enhance the functioning of the immune system by stimulating certain cell types such as macrophages, lymphocytes, natural killer cells, NK cells, dendritic cells, and eosinophils by mechanisms including modulation of cytokine secretion, immunoglobulin production, phagocytes, and macrophage activation. Onions. Onions are similar to garlic, is an immune-boosting food rich in fructans. It's interesting. Can you believe that the first 62 years of my life, I did not look out of this eye, or read, or do anything out of this eye? Everything was out of this eye. And last year, I got I went to an eye doctor, and I said, I've got to have something I need to see. This eye's just not getting it. Well, he put a contact in this eye. And all the guys I went to before, they never could figure out how to do it. But this eye doesn't read, this one reads, and so I'm having some challenges. I'm not used to reading yet with this eye, so I apologize. But it's amazing how you can think it was just blurry all those years, and now I can see. Another optometrist never picked up on tried glasses or whatever, never worked. This is the other one, and I probably use this one first. And this guy is amazing. I have him in my pocket of my turnouts, my fire turnouts. I have him in my backpack that when I go wildland firefighting or search and rescue, it's in my backpack. Mary Lou's got it on her side of the bed. I've got it on my side of the bed because we don't want to wake each other up in the middle of the night if we feel like. Have you ever woke up in the night and feel like you're catching something? Well, if you will use oil of oregano, you've got to catch it in the incipient stage. But boom, it's gone. If it's back 2 hours later, do it again, but it's usually then gone. I use liquid. It does. Now, when I use it, I don't use it straight. The one I use is 25% oil of oregano, 75% olive oil. You'll burn your mouth, you burn the esophagus, you burn your stomach. Even if you put it in a glass of water, oil and water doesn't mix. And so even though it's got one drop, it can then still touch something and be pretty hot on it. So I use something that's already mixed, or I'll mix it myself. And that I can then, I do 10 drops. But that's a lot. I usually tell folks, just do three drops. But it will wipe it out. It is phenomenal. Oregano oil is a powerful plant-derived essential oil that may rival antibiotics when it comes to treating or preventing various infections. Oregano oils contain properties that are antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal.
Have you heard about using oregano oil for warts?
Yes.
I used it on my middle son.
How'd it work?
It got rid of it. He had it for years on his toe,
Mm-hmm.
and he was getting more and more. And I started using oregano oil with some carrier oil, and it was gone.
Yes, it's that and tea tree and propolis. A good quality bee propolis can also work good for that. Yeah, also I'll use the oil of oregano for mold. When people, they have mold toxicity, they'll do start out with 3 drops 3 times a day and work up to 10 drops 3 times a day. Some physicians will take them even up to 15 drops 3 times a day. That's of the mix, 25%, 75%. and it's excellent for mold. Also toenail fungus. There's 3 things I found on toenail fungus, 4 things on toenail fungus. Number 1 is a good probiotic. If you don't have good gut bacteria, and Dr. Harold Cherney told me that years ago, but I took a course maybe a year or 2 ago, and the instructor talked about you've got to have those probiotics to help with fighting for toenail fungus. The other is oil of oregano, the other one is tea tree, and the other one is thyme. Not the herb thyme, but the thyme here. It takes about a year. It's a tough one. And so, say you could put oil of oregano in the morning and tea tree at night. And, pardon? No, put it on the toenail fungus. Yes, on the toenail fungus. But oil of oregano is amazing in being antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal. Consuming it, yes. Zinc. Zinc is a mineral that's important to the body in many ways. Zinc keeps the immune system strong, helps heal wounds, and support normal growth. Men more so need zinc than women. Men are more prone to lose zinc than women. If you do take high doses of zinc, be cautious because zinc lowers copper. If you have too high a copper, what do? You give the patient zinc, copper. And so if you're taking 40, 50 milligrams of zinc a day, you might want to look at taking 3 to 5 milligrams of copper a day because zinc can lower your copper. Vitamin C. Vitamin C is one of the largest immune system boosters of all. In fact, lack of vitamin C can even make you more prone to getting sick. Foods rich in vitamin C, guava, kiwi fruit. Now get this. I went to a seminar, and the lady speaking was the nutritionist for the United States Navy SEALs. So she's got to be pretty good to get that job. And she said that the cap, the little green cap on a strawberry, that think of how many truckloads. I grew up, we did a lot of strawberries growing up. And we capped them, remember? Threw them away. Those caps have more vitamin C than an orange. So if you're making a strawberry smoothie, say you get 6, 8 strawberries in there, you throw in the blender, leave them on, she said. And you don't taste it it's nasty eaten by itself, but if you put it in the blender, making a smoothie, you have more than 6 or 8 oranges of vitamin C. So guava, kiwi fruit, strawberry caps, oranges, broccoli, kale. Daily intakes of vitamin C is essential for good health because your body doesn't produce or store it. Cleveland Clinic. And we talked about vitamin C and vitamin D.
What do you mean by strawberry cap?
You know the green top on a strawberry? That little leafy thing on top. Yes. B6, vitamin B6. Vitamin B6 is vital to supporting biochemical reactions in the immune system. B6 is found in green leafy vegetables or green vegetables and chickpeas. Also, B6 is very important for nerves, for nerve function. Vitamin E. E is a powerful antioxidant that helps the body fight off infection. Foods rich in vitamin E include nuts, seeds, and spinach. But what happens if you freeze your spinach? You kill the vitamin E. Or your seeds or your nuts that are high in vitamin E. You're going to kill the vitamin E off. Cleveland Clinic. Elderberries. Pardon? Well, no, because they're high in vitamin E. Huh? But walnuts have some vitamin E. But more in almonds. Almonds have a lot more vitamin E than walnuts. If the nut's high in vitamin E, if you're after the vitamin E, you don't want to freeze it. Yeah. Okay, does elderberries grow up here? Okay, elderberries are huge. Elderberry inhibits the early stages of an infection by blocking key viral proteins responsible for both the viral attachment and entry into the host cells. Now, it's interesting here, y'all. The phytochemicals from the elderberry juice were shown to be beneficial in stopping the virus infecting the cells. However, to the surprise of the researchers, they were even more effective at inhibiting viral propagation at later stages of the influenza cycle when the cells had already been infected with the virus. they're finding that it helps prevent it from attaching to the walls in the lung. This is from the University of Sydney, where this research came out. This observation was quite surprising and rather significant because blocking the viral cycle at several stages has a higher chance of inhibiting the viral infection. So taking that elderberry is very, very effective in fighting the viral issues. Astragalus. Anybody ever done astragalus? Astragalus has so many benefits outside of just immune system that it would be good for us to take astragalus every day. Some herbs we can take every day. Some herbs we cannot. We cannot take golden seal every day. We cannot take echinacea every day. But there are some herbs that we can take every day. You just have to look and see which one. So for the golden seal echinacea, you can say golden seal for 2 weeks, echinacea 2 weeks. Golden seal 2 weeks, echinacea 2 weeks. Golden seal, be cautious on golden seal. The rule of thumb is 2 weeks. You can go a month, but long-term utilization, even by pulsing, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, you can have issues of depression. It's stated that depression can be around 6 months, but I have seen it as quick as a month and a half. I've actually seen a person become suicidal at a month and a half, taking golden seal constantly. And so you want to be cautious on golden seal. Golden seal is one of my favorite herbs. I use it for wounds, earaches. If you want to get rid of strep throat, take you a teaspoon of golden seal, put it in a cup, pour in some hot water, let it sit for 30 minutes, gargle for 2 minutes, swallow. Every 2 hours, you will wipe out, every waking 2 hours, you will wipe out strep throat normally within 24 to 48 hours. It's very fast. If you want to get rid of diverticulitis, 3 capsules, 3 times a day of golden seal, phenomenal. Within 1 to 2 days, diverticulitis is over. It's amazing what God has given us, and it's so strong.
So weekly trade-off is good?
Pardon?
Weekly trade-off is
You can do 2 weeks, and you're good.
5 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Astragalus, you can get it at your health food store. Mm-hmm. The broad array of immune-stimulating characteristics of astragalus has been widely used in treating patients with both acute and chronic infections, including viral myocarditis and viral hepatitis. Astragalus has demonstrated immune potentiating effects in human, animal, and in vitro studies, and is often used as an adjunctive therapy in IV-positive persons and those affected with AIDS. So they're using it together. Echinacea. Does echinacea grow here? Echinacea grow here? Pardon?
If it's not perennial,
But if you plant it each year? Okay. Echinacea preparations are commonly given in Europe for the prophylactics or the treatment of bacterial and viral infections. Prophylactic means ahead of, and as an adjunct to treatments of more severe infections, so using it together with other properties. Echinacea extracts are commonly used to treat upper respiratory infections, influenza-like infections, and are reported to significantly reduce symptoms accompanying the common cold. Iodine. Iodine, natural antiviral, antifungal, and antibiotic. So iodine is what? Antiviral, antifungal, and an antibiotic. Iodine was the most effective agent for killing viruses, especially influenza viruses. NAC, y'all familiar with NAC? And rocket fuel. Who's ever had rocket fuel? Rocket fuel is amazing in building your immune system. Garlic, 5 to 10 cloves. Onion, half an onion. Ginger, a thumb of ginger. Lemon juice, the juice of 2 lemons. 2 tablespoons of honey, unless Mary Lou's making it. She puts 3 tablespoons of honey. Cayenne pepper, 1/8 to 1/2 teaspoon. Elderberry syrup, 1 tablespoon. Alimed, I put a tablespoon. Add warm water to net 1 quart. So you put all that in, and then you add enough water to net 1 quart, blend it up, and drink all in 30 to 60 minutes. It's amazing for being antibacterial, antiviral. It's a great tool to use. Pardon?
Liquid hydrogen and oxygen.
Oh, yes. Yeah, rocket fuel. Any questions on the immune system? Let's take about a 10-minute break, come back, and the next topic that we're going to talk on today is stress, the #1 diagnosis in America today. What are some things you can do for stress? Tomorrow morning is going to be a real fun class. It's my hardest class. It's my most fun class, but the hardest class, because there's so much to share, and it's Old Mountain Remedy.